Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Thanks for being here with me. Austin Clark of Boxy Pest Control. I'm the host of the Multiply You podcast. We have a very exciting guest that will be speaking to us today, Robert Clinkenbeard, who I'll introduce here in just a moment. Just a phenomenal career, and he's just in the middle of it. He has so much more that he's doing, and it's neat to be spend some time with people that are up to just really, really big things. And so we're really grateful to have him on today. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. Moxie, we are growing, we're booming. We're actually looking to be able to hire probably 200 people inside of the next 60 days or so. So, Robert, if you know anybody, send them our way, especially in the Phoenix market. You might have some connections there.
That's a tough market.
Yeah, it's a tough market. It really is. And we, one of our purposes right now is growth. We've never had a challenge growing. And so we're looking to be able to continue to do that. One of the ways we've done that recently is via acquisition. And so if anyone out there is familiar with either a pest control owner that's looking to exit or looking to be able to get out, we'd love to be able to talk to them. We've put together some pretty neat programs to help those owners transition into different parts or chapters of their lives. And we've had really good luck coming up with win-win situations and solutions that help them to be able to do just that. They can text or call me directly on my cell. It's 480-254-9730. They can email me directly at aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com. And we'd love to be able to meet them and look forward to doing that. So thank you so much. Without further ado, Robert Clinkenbeard. He's the CEO of the Radix Group, which has offices in Greenville, Phoenix, and the UK. He's an entrepreneur, an author, and a 4-time Ironman. Having sold his $20 million company, now has several franchises, multiple real estate investments, and the largest peer group facilitation company in the US, all while raising a large family. He's also a senior leader in EO, and therefore understands the challenges of CEOs within growing companies. Robert will help your audience with getting a higher business valuation, reinvigorated passion for their businesses, extra time with family and friends, growth of key employees, and a company culture that adopts the vision as if it were their very own. Robert, thank you so much for being on. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. I appreciate you bringing me on as a guest today. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Kind of like we were talking just a moment before we went live. We had met a few years ago at a networking event. Hadn't really connected since then. And since I've been doing a little bit more homework the last few weeks, first of all, your monthly newsletters from the Radix Group, they are phenomenal. I love them. Really glean a lot of really good information from them. I kind of showed you earlier, I picked up your book the other day. I'm about halfway through it, Ironman Mindset. I love it. It almost makes me want to go take up running, but not quite. And so you've had a phenomenal career, and you're still doing so much more. And so, I mean, how did some of that start? One of the things that I love that I read is that you're an immigrant from Scotland. And what I love about that is that, I mean, there's different challenges that you perhaps may have faced that other people did not, but coming here to be able to, I don't know if it was chasing the American dream or looking to better the situation, but how did all of that come about? And maybe talk to us for just a moment about ILM and kind of the early days and what that looked like.
Yeah, no problem. I think coming from Scotland's definitely helped me along my journey. The Scottish people are definitely known for hardworking, being fairly tough and resilient. So, when I look back at my journey over, I suppose, the last 20, 30 years, there's actually pivotal moments in when, maybe I've come up against some type of a challenge. And instead of sticking my head in the sand and, wallowing in my own worries, I've almost used that as an opportunity to step into that fear and come out of it with almost like that growth mindset. So example being, quickly after I got divorced for the first time, I decided that, life was too short. I just didn't want to sit around and, not see the world. So, because I had a dual passport, I was able to pretty much pack up my bags in the UK, and I arrived in the States. I arrived in 99 with pretty much just two suitcases. And, I just thought, I, what does the Americas look like for me? Does it new business? Is it just a chance to travel in different places? And after being in the States for roughly a year, joined probably one of the nation's largest landscape companies called, at that time, Environmental Care or Valley Crest. And they got, a little bit too corporate for me. So my business partner and I, we decided to start our own company, ILM, back in 2001. And our main purpose around that business was really just take care of our clients. We felt as though our previous company was just totally after the dollar, but we wanted to really take care of our clients and make sure there was good quality issues. We actually call people back. So we started off in 2001. And yes, it was a long journey, but it was a fairly quick growth. We got it from, pretty much zero up to, 20 million over a period of just shy of 15 years. So, we learned a lot of things. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, but, I look back, and that's why I moved into this coaching role, is to try and help people make less mistakes in going on their journey.
So let's dig a little bit more into that then. What, entrepreneurs every day, they're faced with very difficult challenges. They're faced with so many challenges, whether it's cash, strategy, people, customers, all of that. What would you say were some of the game-changing decisions that you, perhaps you with your partner, what were some of those decisions that you needed to make to allow you to scale your company to that size in such a short amount of time?
Yeah. One interesting statistic is that there's only 4% of companies that will transition up to over $1 million. So it's really interesting, crazy statistics that there's, especially when there's something like 30,000 businesses started every day around the world. And I think the biggest challenge that I see is that many owners, founders will really struggle to make that transition to working in the business rather than on the business. So the big decision maker for me and the game changer was to really hire some good people to surround me with. So that allowed me to work more on the business and trying to look to how do we scale up this business and develop those people underneath me. So that, when we grew, to 10, 15, 20 million, I had a real key set of managers in place that I could rely on, and either to enjoy myself through some travels or doing my Ironman training, or to be able to work on, taking the business to different states. So people is probably the biggest game changer for me.
Incredible. And, when you started to ask yourself those questions, hey, there's some things that have got to change around here. Maybe I've got to change. Maybe the process has got to change. Maybe some people. About what size and revenue were you when either you had this epiphany or realization to say, hey, I need to either level up the talent that I've got, or I need to get new talent that's capable. What size revenue or so were you? Or was there also an event that happened that said, I need to replace this person or train this person? What inspired that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was necessarily an event, but I think we were around about that 10, 11 million mark, and I just knew there was no way I was going to be able to, keep in touch with all the clients, make sure that the quality was there. So I remember being introduced to somebody within the Phoenix market, and they happened to have some really good colleagues who were also in that similar market, and I think I pretty much brought on 3 really good people at the same time. And they were in a different sector of our industry, but I just knew I had to make that investment on onboarding them, training them, and they eventually went into really senior positions. So yeah, around about that, 8, 10 million mark, that made a big difference in terms of bringing on good people.
That's great. And so I don't know what your work life looked like at that point. I would imagine that you were working as many hours as you needed to be able to get the job done. But that was probably a pivotal time as you brought those people on. What would you say to business owners that are either at that mark, hopefully not at their within, but how would you, or what would you say to them to have them transition to working more on the business rather than in the business?
Yeah, I think I would say there's a lot of people really struggle with that because they like to have that control. They have that fear of being able to give control to other people, or have that fear on delegating to other people because they feel as though they can't get them up to that their standard. But you've really got to almost take a step back in terms of really onboard that person. That onboarding might be 90 days, it might be 6 months. So really got to take almost like a step back, because ultimately you'll never grow to the size you want to do if you've tried to have your fingers on all the pieces. And yes, you might take a little bit of a dip in profit, maybe even break even for a couple of years, but unless you go through that type of plateauing, then you'll never take that next step up in your business.
You said something really interesting that I've never thought about before as far as plateauing, as far as revenues go. When you see scaling companies, it's normally not a straight line. Normally you make it to a mark and then, like you say, they plateau. Sometimes there's maybe even a little bit of a decline. Do you think then that plateau or decline for a period of time is because companies need to do exactly as you've said, take a step back to be able to say, okay, what do the next 3 years look like or 8 years look like? Is that why there's that dip possibly in revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be people, it could be software, it could just be the infrastructure they have in place, but there's definitely some big rock or big challenge that's facing them that they're not necessarily addressing head on. So once you get through that challenge and address it, then that usually allows them to scale up to the next section. Because as you go up to, again, going back to statistics, when you start going up to 10 million, it gets to 0.4%, the people that get to that size. So as you go up that different scale, obviously the numbers get less and less. And usually there's some big challenge or rock in the way of getting that company through to the next level.
Wonderful. I think that might transition us nicely into, so you've had an incredible career doing, running your company and scaling your company. And since you've transitioned into business coaching, business consulting, what are some of the things that perhaps you're able to say as a coach that maybe now as a coach, you're like, man, I should have been saying those things to my people. Maybe you were, but what as a coach are you able to say to either key people in an organization that are clients of yours or frontline employees? What do some of those exchanges look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough because, a lot of the time I'll come into a company and I'll just sort of start peeling back the layers. And it's never nice when you're telling somebody, and I'm not necessarily a fan of this phrase, but when you're telling somebody their baby's ugly. and usually it's because you're uncovering things, you're seeing things to owners that they've built up for years. There's spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over. And effectively, you're coming in as an outside expert or outside viewpoint and looking from a different perspective. And you're really challenging over some of the things they've done. And it's not necessarily, you're not criticizing them. It's just a case of, you want the best thing for their business. That's typically why they're bringing me in, is to try and help them improve their business. And unless I call them out in some of the things they've done that don't necessarily make sense for them to grow to another size, then they're just going to continue on. They're not going to grow up the company. So I'll come in and I'll challenge them over certain people in place. They maybe not be the right people to take them to the next level. Maybe even there's some family members around, which can always be a challenging conversation. Maybe they're taking too much money out of the company, so there's no cash for them to grow to the next level. Maybe they're doing everything by spreadsheets, so they don't have that software to allow them to scale up. So there's a number of different things that I quickly uncover as soon as I come in, peel back the layers, ask a bunch of questions, and really get down to the nitty gritty and what's going on in a company.
So you, with all of your experience, there's certainly probably patterns. I mean, you could probably walk down the street, drive down the street, point to any business, whether it's a brick and mortar or whatever else, and know that, hey, all of these companies or all of the clients that you currently have or will have in the future are for sure facing these couple of things. I mean, where do business owners go wrong all of the time, like every single time?
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes it's the owners are still working in the weeds, so they don't necessarily they don't take the time to look at it from a different angle. So they're dealing with that day-to-day minutia, and they're not coming up for a breath, and so they just continue that grind, and they just feel as though they're working hard every day, and they probably are, but are they working smarter? So, and even it's not just the case, even with small companies, even bigger companies have similar challenges. They just tend to hide it a little bit more. They've got a lot more money to play with. But once you peel back the layers, and I think the other challenge I find is a lot of owners or founders still have a little bit of an ego. So they tend to think that they know it all. But I think it's only, I think you have to keep an open mind and be around other business owners and other entrepreneurs to open your eyes up to what else other companies are doing, what other technology plays are out there. And once you start letting down the walls and allow them to be coached and allow them to see what's going on in the company and other companies and just be open to learning, that's where I feel as though there's a transformational change to allow their companies then to scale up to another level.
So you talk about ego, and from your perspective, I've got to learn just a little bit more about that. I'll talk about my organization for just a moment. Where today at about half of where your company was when you exited, will the plan, our strategy is to be to where you were when you exited in inside of the next 2 years by the end of 2022. We feel like we've got a very good growth plan to be able to get there and do it in a way that still provides a certain level of service that our customers have come to expect. But I feel like we're in a place right now where things aren't as clear as they used to be $5 million ago, or there's just more people, there's more vehicles, there's more equipment that is either not getting maintained. And so I feel like we've broken a lot of the systems and processes that we had in place. I find myself, I guess you could say, not running around, but solving some of these issues, perhaps in the weeds a little bit myself. And so how is it, Robert, that you bring around a business owner to bring their ego down for a moment, so you can say, hey, valued client, John, or whoever it is, you have got to stop this insanity for a moment so that you can hire someone like you said, or train someone like you said, to be able to do some of the things that you feel that only you can do, but someone else can do. I mean, how do you, is it just time with them? Do you have some really neat Ironman psychological, you know what I mean? How do you make that breakthrough?
Yeah, I just start challenging. I start asking them a lot of questions. And, the goal is to ultimately make them realize that they're not leading the company the way they should be, that they need to transition. And only once they realize themselves that they need to make a change will, again, transformation happen. So asking a lot of the questions, asking them what the company's vision is, and then starting to ask them some of the key employees, again, what's the strategy for growth, and what's the communication? What do the meetings look like? What's the structure of the meetings? And are there numbers that you're following. So once you start asking those questions, and I've actually got a full checklist of things that, a real high performing company should be doing, then, once you start realizing they're only scoring, I don't know, 10 out of 40, then they're quickly realizing, well, I thought I had a good company, but, there's a lot of work still to happen. And if they're still in the weeds dealing with that day-to-day minutia, then they're never going to take that, they're never going to fix those items. So it's a case of them, that self-realization first. And then after that, what's the game plan to help them, do things like block out time so they can work on the future of the company, see who they are, the emerging leaders are within the company, again, to delegate to them and empower them to take over some of the stuff that you're working with. So yeah, that's a typical exercise I'll go through.
I love the transition just a little bit into some of your Ironman training. That's been something I think I read that the very first one you did, you were 41, and you've done 4 between then and now. Perhaps it's even more than that now. But what are some of those? What are some of the things that you've learned from your training and that kind of mindset that you've incorporated into your business?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I always had the goal of writing a book, but I just started to think, well, what's my theme going to be? And I wanted to try and explain to people that, yeah, I had a big company, but I also had time. I had it structured in such a way that I was still able to go out and train for 20 plus hours a week. And you can only do that by having principles around, again, the right people in place, being super disciplined about your schedule, having that roadmap. And the roadmap can not only relate to business. So your roadmap in business, I see, is what's your strategic plan for the next 3, 5, 10 years? Where are you going? Are you going to grow, double your size? Are you going to grow to different states? And what does that growth look like? Does it include acquisitions? It's the same with an Ironman race. If you have like the finish line of an Ironman, 6 months away, you're not just going to, turn up in a day and run the Ironman. You need that.
It'd be a bad idea for me to go and do that right now, right?
me and you both. But you need some type of a training plan so that every single day or every single week, what do I need to achieve? I would sometimes do 2 training sessions a day, but the night before I'd be looking at my plan and say, okay, tomorrow I need to ride my bike for 2 hours, and then I also need to swim, 2,000 meters. And I would look at my schedule and how can I fit that into my schedule? What are my work commitments? What's my meetings? How can I make this all work so that I balance between my training, I can balance to keep my family happy, and also I can achieve what I need to do. So it became super disciplined. So that was the main things. But then even going into further, the 2 of the points I wanted to make is making sure that you're surrounded by good people. So in business, it could be coaches, it could be financial experts, it could be a sales expert. There's, typically an owner is not an expert on every single thing in the business, but if there's somebody that can help them along the way to tweak your business. And it's the same in triathlon training, in that I was a terrible swimmer. I could literally swim one length of the pool. So the first thing I did is I brought on a swim coach. And, I was very humbled. I literally was trying to float in a pool just to get my confidence up. But, I brought a running coach in, I brought a bike coach in, I had somebody help me with my nutrition. So I quickly recognized that I needed help, and I was open to being coached and helped. And I was willing to pay for that. So the 2 sort of go side by side. And that's why I wanted to try and relate the 2 between the physical part through the triathlon training, but also in business.
Yeah. And so I would imagine, you did your first one at 41, perhaps months or years before you started to train to be able to accomplish that goal. But I can't imagine that it was in that moment that you had developed that discipline. You know what I mean? You ran and scaled a successful business, and so maybe some of those things were there all along. Do you think that your approach to business also helped you with your approach to training to be an Ironman?
I think so. I think, again, it goes back to, I suppose, my upbringing, just again, being resilient to challenges. So, I grew up playing soccer, grew up playing rugby. So, fairly tough sports. But, again, every single day we're walking into business and there's some type of challenges, whether it be a cash flow issue, whether it be employee issues, accidents on your vehicles. And it's really easy to get knocked down and beat up. And again, a lot of people will struggle with that negativity. And I think just maybe over the years between, some of the challenges I've gone through and some of the, being in adverse conditions where I've come across the States with pretty much nothing, and just being able to see the positive through that and lean into that fear. I have a great saying that I use all the time, that only good things happen on the other side of fear. And there's a lot of people, there's two ways you can go. If you come up against a challenge or feel for a situation, you can either back off and just go back to what you normally do, or you could lean into that fearful moment and come out of it on the other side with some type of a growth or learning that will give you more confidence going into your next challenges, because challenges are always going to be around us. In business, you're going to have legal challenges, and personally, you're going to have, a lot of relationship challenges. So, you got to lean into that fear.
Wonderful. You talk a lot about strategy and planning early on with you and your partner. Was it always the plan to sell the company, or and if you're able to talk about it, let's. If not, we can go on to something else and wrap up. But what was it that kind of had you make that decision to, I've done this, I've grown this, it's time to get out and do something different? What helped you to make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a constant learner. I go to a lot of learning situations, and there was one particular event I went to, and there was some unbelievable speakers coming in. There was Vern Harnish and all these founders of Travelocity. So it was an amazing event, and I think during that event, I had that light bulb moment where I just felt as though life was too short. There was definitely some challenges beginning to happen between my partner and I, and we were on slightly different pages in terms of I wanted to try and keep on that growth track. And I felt as though he was more into that lifestyle. So, I came back from that event and, pretty much discussed with them and how we were going to cordially part ways. And so that's basically what happened. Is after, I think, 6-7 months after that conversation happened, we sold to a large $4 billion company. And, I definitely haven't regretted that. Because I feel as though I've grown a lot since that scenario. And I was in an unhappy place at that time. So definitely in a lot better interest and a lot more in control of my own destiny.
Yeah. Well, and that's another conversation for another day, but what that next chapter looks like. I mean, that's, as we're helping business owners and we're having the opportunity to, be on the acquiring side, some of them are so fearful, Robert, of what they'll do. They've done this for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. And they just, you can only sweep the garage so many times in a day. And a lot of them just have they just don't know what they'll do with their time. They don't know what they'll do with their time. And so, well, very good. Finally, as we maybe bring this to a head, every entrepreneur or person has people either beside them or encouraging them or inspiring them. What is it that you do, Robert? I mean, how do you continue to stay relevant. So where do you turn for, when I say education, I'm not talking college. What kind of books do you read? What kind of podcasts do you listen to? You mentioned Bernd Harnisch of Scaling Up earlier. Who has helped you along that path, and how do you continue to stay sharp and relevant and important for your clients that you're providing an incredible service for?
No, I appreciate that question. Certainly Bernd Harnisch and this whole Scaling Up organization is a big part of that. I'm now a Scaling Up certified coach, but I'm also part of a group called Entrepreneurs Organization. And, they bring in some amazing speakers. We had Usain Bolt on a few weeks ago. We had.
Were you able to race him, Robert? How'd you do? You're more of a long distance runner. He's more of a.
He left me standing, unfortunately. He left me. But what was interesting about even just that presentation was, Usain said something really inspiring, was that be aware of your weaknesses, but invest in your strengths. And it's so true, because we all have our weaknesses, and sometimes we focus so much too much on our weaknesses and trying to improve, but we don't spend enough time on what our strengths are. So I'm a huge believer on EO, the Scaling Up piece. I go to as many events as I can, because again, I want to not only educate myself, but I want to take back my knowledge to help my clients. I'm being aware and making connections around the world. And I feel as though I need to keep that saw sharpened all the time.
Yeah. So you'll go to seminars. You've definitely got mentors of your own. Any books that you've heavily leaned on or that have been inspiring to you as you've scaled your business and perhaps now even in consulting?
Yeah, I read a lot. Typically, I only typically remember the latest books I've read, but there's one. It's called Who Not How, and it's I'm trying to remember the author now, but really good book, and it talks about when you want to try and reach a goal. A lot of people will think about how am I going to get there? What are the steps I need to take to get there? But his whole book around who are the people around you that are going to help you get to that point. And so I listened to a bunch of podcasts. So again, I'm always trying to learn. I'm trying to learn about new investments. And, you made a good point about, what's the next step for business owners as they start to think about an exit. And yeah, it was a difficult transition, but if you're aware and around other people and you see what else is going on in the industry, then usually you've got a pretty good idea what you're going to transition into.
Wonderful. I think it was Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy on that Who Not How. I looked it up.
Thank you.
Well, that's incredible. Robert, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being on. If people need to connect with you or do they find you on LinkedIn, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a good way. I also, my website is the radixgroupllc.com. And, even, for your audience, then I'd be happy to provide them with a digital copy of my book, Robert at the radixgroupllc.com.
Oh my gosh, wonderful. Thank you.
To give that to them. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And everyone listening, Will, our audience is mostly home service, business owners, managers, leads, frontline employees, nationally, not just in the Phoenix or Arizona area, but nationally. And it's been neat to be able to hear from a lot of them and get that response. And I know that they'll really appreciate that. Thank you for that offer.
No problem.
Well, very good. Thank you so much, Robert, for being on. Sure appreciate you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Subscribe for more episodes. We'll drop these things once a week. We'll have more fantastic guests on, just like we were able to hear from Robert and the really neat things that he's up to. And so until next time, we'll talk to everybody later.
Okay, thanks, Austin. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.